So today is gonna be an epic video. I have got 6 freezer meals planned out for you with a shopping list so you can feed your family dinner for pretty much the whole week because some of these recipes are gonna have leftovers. And the best part is these ingredients only cost $40 to buy at Walmart. Can you believe it? 6 meals for 40 bucks. Let's hop right in. So here's everything that I picked up from Walmart along with the shopping list. So you can either screenshot this or also I will have it in the description box below. But I was happy with this amount I got for just over $40. Lots of protein and produce and plenty of cans of veggies and tomatoes and beans. So the first thing I like to do when I'm prepping a bunch of freezer meals is to prep my produce. So I've got some cilantro, garlic, onions, carrots, and celery. And all of these veggies are going to be used across the meals. So the first thing that I'm going to do is wash my cilantro. I like to put that in my salad spinner and just soak it in really, really cold water. That helps remove the dirt and kind of refresh it a little bit. And then I spin it dry and usually just put it out on a paper towel, pat it dry as best I can, then roll it up and I stick it in a Ziploc bag and put it in the fridge. Usually cilantro like this will last me for over a week. Next, I'm going to work on the celery. Make sure that you cut your celery up and then wash it because there's oftentimes a lot of dirt trapped in those inner parts of the celery. While that soaks, I'm going to go ahead and chop up my onion. So this particular plan calls for 2 large onions. I did not pick these out because I did grocery delivery and oh my gosh, these were probably 2 of the biggest onions that I have had. So it took me a little bit to chop those up, but I just went ahead and used my bench scraper, which I'll link in the description box below, to kind of transfer all of those onion pieces into the bowl. And then once my celery was done soaking, I'm going to go ahead and chop that up pretty finely. If you don't mind bigger pieces of celery, you don't have to chop them up this fine, but this is what my family prefers. And then for the carrots, you just have to peel those. And then part of the carrots I'm going to dice, and then I'm going to leave a few in coins because the coconut chicken soup and rice that we're going to make calls for kind of these round pieces of carrot. After I made all these recipes, I realized that it probably didn't really matter. So you can honestly chop up your carrots however you like. These recipes are going to be cooked either in the Instant Pot or the slow cooker. So they're going to go ahead and get soft while you're cooking them anyway. For my garlic, I'm going to go ahead and use this little garlic peeler roller thing. I don't even know what it's called, but I'll also link that down below. It is an awesome tool. So I went ahead and prepped all my garlic. So all of my produce is done. I've got a big bowl of onions, my carrots, celery, and garlic and cilantro all ready to go. So the next thing I always like to do when I'm prepping freezer meals is to cook any protein that needs to be cooked. And sometimes this isn't something that you have to do. There are people that add ground beef to freezer meals raw, but I could prefer to cook it and season it and drain it ahead of time. So one of the things that has really helped me throughout my career journey and just personal journey is coaching. I find coaching is so valuable to have that kind of outside perspective and unbiased party to really give you some thoughts about how to move forward when you're thinking about making big changes in your life or career. And that's why I'm excited to let you know that strawberry.me is sponsoring today's video. Okay, so I just got off my coaching session with my assigned coach, Alexis, and it was so freaking helpful. And I think as I continue to process what we talked about over the next several days, it will be even more helpful because I am considering a change in my career. And honestly, it's something that I've been kind of thinking about and struggling with. And it's always helpful to have like an outside perspective, especially from someone that is super smart and educated and can just give you that objective opinion. She is so just knowledgeable and kind and positive. And I think really what's helping me is feeling more optimistic and confident in the choices that I will eventually make. What I really like about strawberry.me is this service is super accessible and affordable for anyone who is wanting to make personal change in their life. If you've never received coaching before, it's actually really a collaborative process between you and your coach. The other thing I really like is that all of their coaches are certified through ICF accredited programs, so you can have confidence that they are going to help you alongside your growth in a meaningful possible way. So if you feel stuck in old habits or you're just wanting to make a change, whether it's in your career or personal life, you can go to strawberry.me/Jen Chapin, where you can take a short quiz and they're gonna match you with a certified coach based on your unique needs. I also just have to say that you're never going to regret investing in yourself, and working with a certified coach one-on-one can really help you thrive in your life, especially during uncertain times. So once again, I'll have a link in the description box below, strawberry.me/Jen Chapin. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started putting together these meals. I'm going to work on the vegetable beef soup first. I went ahead and already labeled my bags. I'm adding some chopped onion to the bag along with a couple cloves of minced garlic. I'm also going to add some of those carrots that we prepped and the celery, and then some other veggies and some ground beef as well. So kind of the heroes of this meal plan, if you will, are that 1 pound of ground beef that I got along with the 3-pound bag of frozen chicken breast. So we're basically going to stretch those across 6 meals. I added some of the diced tomatoes to the freezer bag along with 1 can of diced potatoes that I drained. I'm also adding some Italian seasoning, some salt and pepper. I'm also going to use that can of corn that I got at Walmart across 2 different meals. So I'm going to use half in this particular recipe and then half in another recipe. If you have frozen mixed veggies on hand or you want to buy those instead, that would also be a great addition or substitute for the cans of veggies that I'm using in this particular video. I tried to work hard on this meal plan so that I was using multiple ingredients across recipes, and that's the reason why we were able to make 6 meals for just $40. Also, when you cook this, you're going to need some beef broth. I always keep the Knorr beef bouillon on hand, so that's what I'll be using. So once you're ready to make the soup, you can just let it thaw out for a little bit on the counter just so it's not all in one big frozen block and it'll fit in the slow cooker. Dump that into the slow cooker and then add 4 cups of beef broth. I am obviously using the Knorr beef bouillon like I mentioned before. So I added 4 cups of water and then a sprinkle of the bouillon. Typically the ratio is 1 teaspoon per 1 cup of water. However, I usually like to start with less and then I can always add more or add more salt. I cooked this on high for 4 hours and it turned out perfect. The beef was nice and tender. I did have to really adjust the seasoning with this particular recipe. I added some sugar because I thought that the tomato taste was a little bit sharp. And then I also added some salt and a little bit more beef bouillon, but obviously you can season it to your taste and it turns out great. I actually like this with crackers, and this might be a hot take, but I like a little bit of shredded cheddar cheese over the top as well. And then we're going to go ahead and get started on our coconut chicken soup. This recipe turned out so good. It was my first time making it, so I'm excited to share it with you guys. I've got 2 of those frozen chicken breasts in the bottom of my bag. I'm adding some onions, some carrots, some celery, and some garlic, basically all of our traditional kind of flavor enhancers there. I'm also going to add some crushed red pepper, some cumin, and some turmeric as well. If you like curry, you're definitely going to like this particular recipe because it kind of gives the same flavor vibes. I also added some ground ginger, and then I'm going to add in 2 cups of chicken broth. Again, I'm using my Knorr chicken bouillon. So I'm going to go ahead and pour that in. Now, this recipe you can either cook in the slow cooker or the Instant Pot. And it kind of makes this really delicious brothy soup with the shredded chicken. We're not going to add the coconut milk until after it finishes cooking, so you'll see that here in a little bit. I do like to mix up the bag a little bit to make sure the seasonings are mixed. I'm actually going to cook this, like I said, in the Instant Pot, so I just thawed out my freezer bag overnight, put it in the Instant Pot when I was ready to cook it, and I'm going to cook this on high pressure for 10 minutes. I do think that my chicken was a tiny bit overcooked, so I think you could even do 8 minutes. I also need some rice to go with this recipe, so I'm going to go ahead and cook that 1 pound bag of rice up right now in my rice cooker. I'm going to use half for this recipe and half for a casserole that we're going to make. So I love this rice cooker. It makes the rice perfect every time. While that's cooking, I went ahead and finished cooking the chicken in the Instant Pot, so I'm going to remove that, and then I chopped up that chicken into into small pieces. I'm adding that chicken back to the broth in the Instant Pot, and I'm going to stir it around and then turn on the saute function so I can add the coconut milk and heat everything up. This chicken, like I said, I was nervous when it came out of the slow cooker. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so tough. But once I diced it up and added it back into the soup and simmered it a little bit more, it actually got a lot more tender and ended up being fine. So lesson learned, you can save almost any recipe unless you like burn it beyond recognition. And then sometimes you can't save it. So at this point you want to taste it and add any seasonings. I did add a little bit more crushed red pepper flake along with some salt just to make sure it was nicely flavored. My rice is done. So what you want to do is ladle the soup into a bowl, and then I packed some rice in a cup and put it on top. I took that cilantro, chopped it up, and put that fresh chopped cilantro over this. And you guys have to try this recipe. If you try one out of this particular meal plan, make sure you try this one. Such a good budget-friendly dinner that seriously does not taste budget-friendly. It's delicious with that rice on top. Next up, we're going to put together the taco soup. So I'm using that other half a pound of the ground beef that I cooked up. The reason why you can get away with half a pound of ground beef in this particular recipe is that there's a ton of beans and other ingredients in it, so you don't really notice that there's not much meat. I added some chopped onion, that other half a can of corn. I'm adding 1 can of Great Value rotel, and then 2 cans of beans that I drained. I did not rinse these, I just drained them. I'm adding 1 can of black beans, 1 can of pinto beans, and then half a can of tomato paste. Tomato paste is a great ingredient to keep in your pantry because you can basically mix it with water and substitute it for any tomato product that is called for in recipes. I also added a bunch of seasonings, and then I'm adding a couple cups of water just to kind of mix everything around. And then when I eventually cook this, I will add more water just to kind of reconstitute the soup. But this recipe is done. Love taco soup. It is a super kid-friendly meal that everyone usually enjoys. So once you heat up your taco soup, either in a pot or in the slow cooker, you can go ahead and shred up that Colby Jack cheese. You're going to use half for this recipe and half for the enchilada casserole. Serve it with some cheese, sour cream, and cilantro, and some tortilla chips if you have some on hand. So I want to take just a quick second to talk about some possible cheap sides that you could have for these dishes. A lot of these are kind of soups and stews. So the first one is a French loaf from Walmart. Those are huge and they're only 99 cents. If you've got some butter or margarine in your fridge, you can put that with it. Homemade focaccia is super easy to make and it's also very cheap. I actually have a recipe in my cookbook, which is linked down below. Cucumber salad, you could do a box of Jiffy cornbread. That is super quick and cheap. Cheese and crackers, I always seem to have the stuff on hand for that. Tortilla chips and salsa, bread and butter. You could do grilled cheese. You could make some homemade naan or pick some up from the store. Cheese quesadillas are also another great idea. A bagged salad or cottage cheese on the side. And special thank you to my sister for helping me brainstorm these. So the next recipe that we're going to work on prepping is this chicken enchilada casserole. So I took 2 small chicken breasts out of that bag, thawed them out in the fridge. I just seasoned them with some taco seasoning that I had in my pantry and some oil and let those sit in the fridge overnight. And then to cook these so I can cut them up for the casserole, I'm just putting them in a pan and sauteing them on both sides. And then to finish cooking so they don't turn out super dry, I just put a cup of water in there and simmer it until the chicken is cooked through with some foil on top. So for this recipe, you'll need some refried beans, 1 can of those. I just put them out into a bowl and mashed them up so they would mix up easier. And then this is the rest of that rice that I had cooked previously. I'm going to go ahead and break that up the best that I can. I probably should have heated this through a little bit in the microwave before trying to mix it, but it all worked out fine. I'm going to season this with some salt and pepper. And then that chicken, while I'm doing this part, is just resting so that all of the juices don't come out when I go ahead and slice it up. Seasoned it with salt and pepper, like I said, and then added half of that shredded Colby Jack cheese that I got in the grocery haul. When the chicken was done resting, I am just cutting that against the grain into small pieces, drop it into my bowl with the cheese and rice and beans, adding 1 can of that Great Value enchilada sauce. And then you just want to mix this through until it is mixed thoroughly. And then go ahead and put it into a casserole dish. I believe this is an 11 by 7. dish, and then go ahead and sprinkle the rest of that cheese over the top. And I did not cook this for this particular video. I actually covered it with foil and put it in the fridge, and we're gonna have it tomorrow night, but I did taste it and it's good. So we will have it topped with sour cream and cilantro. The next recipe I'm showing you is this creamy chicken wild rice soup, and I've been wanting to make this forever because I keep thinking about the Panera creamy chicken wild rice soup, and I don't have a Panera where I live. And so if you're craving this, this is a great recipe to try. Now, the original recipe is a crock pot recipe, which I'll link down below. I'm actually making this in a stock pot because we wanted to have it for dinner on this particular night, and I didn't get it done in time to put into the slow cooker. But the recipe as it's written on the site that I used is a crock pot recipe, so you could totally make this into a freezer meal if you wanted to. I sauteed my onions, carrots, celery. Once those were partially cooked through, I added a couple of those chicken breasts that I diced up, seasoning everything with salt and pepper, and then just cook that on medium heat until the chicken is cooked through, or mostly cooked through. And then at this point I added a 1/4 cup of flour, and I'm just going to stir that around and cook it through a little bit just so you kind of get that raw taste out of the flour. This is also going to help thicken the soup. Once the flour is cooked through, you're going to add your chicken broth. I cut this recipe in half, so I used 3 cups of chicken broth. And then I also added 1 can of evaporated milk. So when I showed you guys the grocery haul that I got, I didn't talk about this, but evaporated milk is a great thing to keep in your pantry. It's basically shelf-stable milk, and you can use it in recipes and for gravies and sauces and different things like that. And then I'm taking that bag of long grain and wild rice that I got from Walmart. I'm using this because it fit into this particular $40 budget meal plan. But if you have regular rice and wild rice on hand, you can add that as well. In fact, I think that's what the original recipe calls for. But if you want to do it super quick, go ahead and pick up a packet of long grain and wild rice. This worked well. This is my second favorite recipe out of this whole batch. Definitely make this. It is so good. We had it for dinner tonight, and I'm looking forward to the leftovers of it. This would be great with some crusty bread dipped in, super creamy and delicious. So the last recipe that I'm going to share with you is super simple, and I've shared several renditions of this on my channel before, either an Instant Pot or a slow cooker chicken noodle soup. So I've just got a couple chicken breasts in the bottom of that bag. I'm adding some onion, some carrot, and some celery, and then also some herbs. So this particular recipe calls for, I believe, basil, thyme, and parsley. I just added basil and parsley because I couldn't find the thyme in my spice cabinet. I'm sure it's in there somewhere. And then I can add this when I cook it. I'm also adding a couple cups of chicken broth. You'll add a few more cups to this once you cook it, but basically you're going to freeze it in the bag like this. And then when you're ready to cook it, throw it in the crock pot with some extra broth. And then you can actually cook the noodles right in the crock pot. They only take about 20 minutes to cook. Really kid-friendly meal that everyone is going to love. So thank you all so much for watching this video. If you want to get coaching, once again, I'll have that link for strawberry.me in the description box below. I cannot explain how helpful it was for me to have that coaching session this week, and I'm looking forward to next week's coaching session. And if you want to see what grocery items I am not buying in 2025 to save on my grocery bills, you can click on this video right here.